Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to create a login and register form that has validation and that is actually linked with a register and a login API server running all on React. So we're going to take like the form we created on the last video, and also we're going to take a server that is running on Node.js with Express and a password.js authentication system that we built also in our earlier video. We're going to combine both of these and we're going to just bind this elegant React form with that system just to do login perfectly plus register perfectly. We're going to just do full validation, email validation, password validation using regexes. Also, we're going to just send a request to registered user and get back with a response and show that response to the user. Say, oh, thanks for registering, or if an error happens, say internal server error or something like that. All of that is going to happen in that particular video tutorial. So it's going to be a complete course for you guys to just take whatever UI form that is sitting there, a React form, and just turn it into an alive form, binding it with a Node.js or whatever API server that is going back and forth using HTTP requests, post and get, and JSONs, and why not. So yeah, that's basically what we're creating here. Let's create in here whenever we do login, we got welcome back, authenticating. If you just put a wrong password or whatever, do login, it says email or password does not match, and that's exactly working with a server that is running on port 5000 that is doing request and response and getting all the data ready for you guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So what we're going to be using here is actually Formik, which is the form state manager library that going to manage all of our React forms. It's just dead simple, easy to use, and very, very easy to integrate. It even has hook support, render props if you prefer that, but I would prefer hooks, of course. And it's open source. It can also support React Native and plethora of stuff, and it's been used widely by a lot of companies cruising here, from Stripe to NASA, Booking.com, many others. So they all loving it, and I've loved it since I started working with this Formik kind of thing, and I've been working with this a couple of years ago. It's just really awesome and really simple. The API is that simple, plus the performance. If you've got thousands of fields that you need to validate over and over again with errors and yada kind of stuff, well, Formik is really performance because it depends on React with the reconciliation algorithm and everything. So it does perform really well in this kind of circumstances where you've got a lot of data to manage and a lot of state to keep up to date. So yeah, I would go with Formik. There's other libraries like Final Form, or I think Redux Form, maybe, if I remember right. But yeah, they both do pretty great of works, both of them. They are pretty awesome. But the case for Formik, I would go because just two things. The API is pretty simple, dead simple, and it has also performance. I see it's more performance, and I see a lot of people talking about that. Formik is much kind of slightly performant than compared to Final Form, for example. So we would go with Formik in that case. So this is going to be using in here, we're going to be installing. Yeah, it's pretty simple, as I said before. And for the validation, well, it kind of depends on this kind of library. It is called Yup. It's pretty awesome name here, and it's actually heavily inspired, exclusive here, from Joy's API. So if you're familiar with Joy's from Have.js, it's a pretty awesome validation library. It has more than 16.8k stars, and this one is pretty heavy. It's made for Node.js runtime on servers and stuff like that. It has a lot of complicated and advanced APIs to use and validation APIs. But yep, it's inspired from that particular API, but it's much more lightweight, and it is targeted toward the front end use, so you don't have a huge bundle to deliver to your clients. And yep, it's that simple and it has a pretty awesome API to use with. And luckily for us, Formik does integrate with Yup really well. So in that case, we're going to be using Yup with Formik in the best way possible you could have ever imagined. So that's what we're going to be basically using for that. This one is for validation. The other one is for form state management, and they're going to integrate pretty well with each other since Formik supports really well Yup, likely for us. So yeah, that's what we're going to be pretty much using in that case. So let's just going to jump into our code. So this is the second one. I'm going to jump, and if you're not familiar with this, is actually the React Modern Form login. I created this project in one of my video tutorials where like showed how to create a login register form with a smooth animation and everything on the place using React. So this is a project, so you can grab it from GitHub. But what I would really recommend is actually go ahead, like watching the video tutorial, like the full video tutorial, to understand exactly how I build that. Then what we can do in this particular video tutorial is actually just like pick up that particular form that we created. Like likely in here, it's actually the project where we created it on. So we're going to grab this project and we're going to add Formik and form state management and validation on top of it. Plus, we're going to bind this with our real world kind of like login register API, which we also created on a video tutorial of mine, which like the Node.js passport.js authentication, like login register API we created on that particular video tutorial. So also, what I would say for that project, it's called like Express Login Register API. You can go to my GitHub, you find it, or link in below description. You're gonna find it for sure. And also, we're gonna give you the link to the video to fully understand and watch that, because this is gonna be like pretty kind of explanatory at first, but you might need the video to like understand how I did that and why I did that in that particular place, and how I did register and login with database setup and all that kind of stuff with passport.js authentication. So that's exactly what we're going to be having in particular case. And yeah, so this is basically the project what we're going to be using, and we are going to just like get started with like the React modern form login to add Formik state management into it. I know I talked a lot, but that is actually needed, very important for you guys to understand exactly how I'm going to walk through this video tutorial setup and what you need to do in order to like follow up with me, because that's pretty important kind of thingy. So yeah, without further ado, so this is basically what we're going to be needing first, and without jumping any further, we're going to be needing to install a couple of stuff. So let's go ahead and install the most important part, it is called Formik. So our state management library, Formik, we have to install that. Next, we need to install Yup, just type in Yup for validation. And last but not least, we're also going to be needing to install in Axios. Why Axios? Also, it is another simpler library. It's kind of like an HTTP library that allows us to do requests on the fly from our like Node.js, and it has promise-based API and a lot of stuff. Axios is really famous. I'm surprised if you don't know about that, but yeah, there you go. We got Axios in here, and that's what we're going to be using to do our like HTTP request to the server to do login and register. Pretty simple. So go ahead and install that, and just going to wait a couple of seconds to get things up and running. So now we got everything installed that we needed. Let's go ahead and clear everything out, and we are going to start our development server. So we took a look on the package.json. We're going to find like the script. There's a start script, which is going to start our development server for us. So all we have to do is just do yarn start, and this one is going to start up a server for us, and it's just going to do everything that we will need behind the scenes. So if we take a look in here, maybe this is going to just like do an auto start for us, not really sure. Yeah, as it says that. So there you go, localhost 3000, not 5000. And this is actually the form if you're not familiar with it. So that's basically what we created in the last video, and that's basically we're going to be adding form state management plus validation into it, plus binding it with like the original API for both login and register, so they both gonna have that up and running and working perfectly. So yeah, that's exactly what we're going to be adding for that. So first things first, to get started with this one, let's go ahead into our component. And I'm going to start with the sign up form. Why? Because this is actually where we are going to register users, and that's what we're going to just like get started, because registration is the most fundamental part that a lot of people would like grasp, want to need to know how to do, because it's such an important part of a lot of like websites and web applications nowadays. So that's basically what we're going to be doing in that particular case. It's just like go ahead and integrate Formik into the sign up form. So it's clear in here for the sign up form what we got. Just quick look up. We got the form container, which has a couple of inputs. If you take a look on the form container, it is basically from styled form. And by the way, if you're not familiar with this syntax, with this kind of like style component thing, we are using styled component library to create our custom styled CSS in JS components, then reuse them normally. So yeah, just watching this video tutorial that I told you about would make you understand exactly what we're doing in here. So we got the form in here, wrapping the import and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, what I did in here actually didn't include, maybe I need to include the submit button we're gonna need, because the submit button needs to go inside the final form, or pretty much the form elements, in order to make sure things are working fine. So if we jump back, we're not gonna see a lot of like differences. they're still going to be the same. It's going to work, I guess, for the sign up form too really well. So yeah, going so far so good. We don't need that much of changes, right? So that's basic stuff, what we need first. Now, to set up Formik, it's pretty simple. We got Formik installed. Now to use Formik, we're going to use hooks. As I said before, you can use render props and other stuff, but since hooks are new, shiny things that a lot of developers, including me, of course, I'm a big fan of them. So I'm going to just jump into hooks and use them right out of the box. So going to do here const. I'm going to have Formik, which is going to return a state for us. I'm going to use Formik. And this one is going to open up auto import for us, use Formik from the Formik library. And for this one, I'm going to pass in a couple of objects. The first most important one is actually initial values. So what initial values you need to pass into your forms, which means what initial values your fields that are going to need to have. For example, we got in here like the full name, email, password, and a confirmed password. Pretty simple, right? So we're going to be needing first is actually the full name. And make sure no spaces, of course, that variable naming. So full name, I'm going to have completely empty. I'm going to have an email, completely empty again. Password, completely empty. And confirmed password is well going to be completely empty. So that's for the initial values. That's how we want our form state's going to just like start up and running with empty string values. Okay. Now the second part, let me just wrap that one here. Now the second part here is actually we want is actually validate on blur. What that means is actually whenever we are typing on a field, we want whenever we click outside the field, like we blur that particular field, we run the validation for our Formik form. That way we can just like display new error messages or just like updates whatever form status it is actually currently on, just on blur. So to do so, just include true, and that should do it. Now we also got on submit, and this one is actually going to initiate it, or this callback is going to be called whenever we submit the form. So we're going to create a function for it that's going to take care of this callback. It's going to be on submit, and you can do whatever in here that takes care of submitting. And by the way, this function takes the values, the current values that the form has. So this value is going to be an object of like full name, email, password, and confirmed password. Pretty simple. So this one is going to be on submit. Now what I can do, just go ahead and do like a large. I can do a JSON stringify just to show how things are going on in that case. Just doing that particular case. Okay. So we got on submit, and the most important object we're going to be need to use now is actually this Formik object. If you take a look on it, you're going to have a lot of stuff, like a lot of states to manage. Basically, all our form states, like the values are going to need the submit handler function, mainly the validation function, and all the kind of stuff are going to be inside of these objects. So here for the form container, it's going to have an on submit handler. So for this one, we need to pass in the Formik.handle submit. So this one, whenever we click enter, whenever we click on the submit button, this one is going to be running like the form on submit handler, and this one is just going to call the Formik handle submit, which in that case, form is going to delegate it into our on submit because we provided that into this particular object, and basically this is going to be running. That's a pretty simple thing to have in that particular case. Now, just for this button, we need to mention this, that this one is a submit, not a regular button, just to make sure that it works perfectly. Okay, so that's basically what we got. Now to set up the fields, which are the most important piece that holds the data and manages the states, obviously. So we have every single field that you want the states to have, be managed by Formik and all that kind of stuff. Make sure to include the name and make sure it has a unique name for that particular form. So this one name, we can pretty much like use something, since it's a full name, so we can just provide the name that we provided for the initial values. Make sure to do so, otherwise the initial values won't work. It would just like be broken. And name here is going to be email, name, password, and last but not least, we got confirm password. Okay, so just provide the names, and this one is going to know like exactly what is going on. Now we also need to provide it with the current value, because this one is going to be like a managed input field by the Formik. So whenever we like change the state, this one is going to go through the Formik handler. This particular one is going to manage the state in some way. It's going to return it right here, then we can use the value for it. So we can do Formik values, and this one is going to be an object as always. Security has all that we need, so full name. And to trigger the change, like whenever a character, whenever this inputs data is changed, so we have to also to do on change callback. So whenever we change that, we can just do Formik.handle change. So just pass it Formik handle change, and regarding this particular name that's provided here, it's going to automatically know which field to update and which value to take and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to do everything for you in that particular simple steps. And hooks make it even simpler for you guys to work with that particular API and just provide that with a simple, easy to use API. Cool. Now we got the value, we got the on change and everything. So let's go ahead and pass in, copy paste all of that. Now we're going to be changing only this one. So I'm going to change email. So for this, it's going to be password last for at least. This one is going to be confirmed password, right? That's pretty cool. So that's what we need. Just going to control save. So value is not defined. Okay, there's something wrong with this one. I'm not sure exactly which value it's talking about. Yeah, so that's values. All right, so we got the full name, the value, on change, and that's basically what we need for a basic setup for Formik to run at the basic level and to update the state every single time, right? So let's go ahead and go into the browser, just refresh that in that case. Then we open up like the dev tools. If any errors happens whatsoever, this is well, this is kind of like an error that's not related to what we have added, maybe another components issue, but we don't care about that. Okay, so let me just zoom that in. I think that's a bit better for you guys to see, but of course you can change the sizes however you want. So let's go ahead and do an email in here. So me@example.com and whatever password. We click login, and this, okay, we need the sign up. Okay, sorry. So it's on the sign up. So whatever name, whatever password, whatever confirm password, we submit, and there you go. We got full name, email, password, as you said it, and confirm password, which is running perfectly. Now the data is being updated, like regardless of whatever we got in here for the sign up. So that's pretty simple. That's the basic setup everything you need to set up Formik. Easy, right? Cool. Now let's jump into the most important part for you guys, which is validation. Now what we want is actually to validate that this should be like a minimum characters or something. This should be an email. This should be matching a particular regex for a password. And this also should be matching this particular password. So that's what you want for a particular validation and how it works. Now to use validation, we're going to use yup as we said before. So let's go and import that. Make sure to import all as yup, because it doesn't have a default export. So just gonna import yup real quick. Now let's go ahead and create the validation objects for it. So I would prefer to create that outside the component because it doesn't need to be updated every single time with every single render, but it's fine to put it inside of there, but I just don't find that much of a need to put it there. There's totally no difference just putting it outside. So that way it could make sense better that this one's not going to be updated, this kind of static thing. You're going to be just using it through other components. Okay, so that's basically what it is. Now let's go ahead and do validation schema. I'm going to use Yup's API. So Yup have something called objects, which is going to just allow you to use any kind of object shape, which means this validation schema is going to tell it, oh, this one is going to be an object and has a couple of fields. For example, it has the full name, and we want to make sure that the full name is a string and it has a minimum of, let's say, 3 characters. If it's not, so curious in here, there's the first attribute in here for the function is actually the minimum number. The second one is actually the message, which is the error message that you want to show up to the user if this criteria is not met. That's the case. So what we want is actually to display a particular image. So please enter your real name or something. That should do it. And also we make sure that is required. So we could show up a message like, oh, full name field is required. Of course you can customize that. So we can do full name is required. Cool. Now it's going to add the last one. So I'm going to do yup. Again, there's going to be a string and one. This is going to use the email. I'm going to just like provide it with an error message. Please enter a valid email address, right? And this one should be required too. Now, also I'm going to be needing a password. So this one is going to be string. And maybe we're going to use some regex to check that we need a strong pass for this one to work. So you can go ahead and activate that using some kind of like a regex. So let me go ahead. I think I got like regex for this one to work as not really sure, but I guess I got one here. So just a quick regex I got. I'm gonna do password regex. I'm gonna paste that in, and basically this regex or regular expression is gonna like test if the password is strong enough, if it has like capital letters, lowercase letters, if it has also numbers plus some special characters, and a minimum of 8 characters. So this one denotes this, otherwise it won't work for you. So I'm gonna use matches function, and this one should match the password regex. If not, I'm gonna say please enter a valid or a strong password. Okay, that should make it pretty self-explanatory. And last but not least, you need to make sure that is actually required. Okay, pretty cool. And last but not least, I also need to do confirm password. So in that case, we're going to use something special with yup that is something like references, and something like has a when function that references another field, which is in that case we want to reference the password field. We're going to grab the value of the password and we check it in with the current value. Then we can decide, oh, if this matches, we are fine. Otherwise, just print this error message to user. So I'm going to do in here, I'm going to do yup. I'm going to just like do string validation again. I'm going to use when. So this one actually takes like which type of field that you want to check, which is in our case the password field. So just enter the name of the field that you want to check in that case. Now second, it takes like an object options, right? So this one has is. So is, it validates if this password field matches the current criteria. So just like a criteria that this password should be matching, which means, for example, we want this password to be valid, like not an empty string. We want it to be a complete string that has some characters, so we can run this convert password checking, right? So for that, it takes like a callback function. We got something like a value. So what we want to check is actually if value and value.length, which is, remember, this value is actually this password's value, just to keep you in sync. So if those are like greater than 0, we're going to return true. Otherwise, so I should use Turing operators. Otherwise, just return false. Now this one is going to decide whether this callback function, which is called then, so this one is going to decide if this one is going to run or not. And this one is actually the most important part, which is going to run. It checks if the password is correct, matches this one. Otherwise, you're going to print out like a message. So I'm going to use yup. I'm going to do string. So like do this kind of matching. I'm going to use one off. So this one off is going to match either this or that. So we can go ahead and pass it in yup reference. So this function references a key and it grabs as a value. So if just like here references, we're going to need to reference a password. So it's going to return us the password's field value, the current field's value, right? So we're going to reference password. In that case, it's going to return it for us. And otherwise, if this one, like one off in here, so if this one is actually kind of like true, so I'm going to reference out this one. Otherwise, it's going to just print out an error for that particular case. So we're going to do password does not match. Okay, that should do the job for us for the confirm password. And it's might seem a bit tricky, but it's pretty simple. The API is pretty simple. You can take a look on Yup's documentation on GitHub. It should be super clear and straight to the point. So yeah, so that's exactly what we're gonna need. Now, I was gonna grab this validation schema, and so we can go ahead and pass it into that case. I'm gonna do validation schema and just pass that in. But that should already be any guess, but anyway, so just passing that one in and it should do the job for us. Now let's go ahead and do console log, check if there is any errors. So we're going to do Formik errors, and this object has all errors with, like, you know, these keys, full name, email, password, and confirm password. So we can go ahead and do like console log, and let me just go and jump into that one. There we go. So let's go ahead and try to input something here. Please enter a strong password, or detail in our please enter a strong password, then it tells us confirm password does not match. And those are two of the errors that we got, the only two errors. If you remove this one, we're gonna have another errors like full name, the full name is required. If you enter up like this one, just a single character in the full name, because please enter your real name, which is telling that the minimum character should be 3. If you enter more, it's going to just disappear. So the validation is pretty much working fine. Now we have to use this kind of objects to render up this particular validation errors for us. So let's go ahead and do that real quick in that case. So for this one, we're going to be using, we need to do something real quick before just like using this one. So we want to input or put some errors. But for our like input, it won't look that good. So we have to do some kind of changes to the input to make it look a bit better. So let's go ahead and add two things. So I'm going to do export cons. I'm going to do a field container. I'm going to equal style.dev. So this one is going to like a container for a field, which means an input and a kind of like an error element or something. So I'm going to make this take a 400%. I'm going to make this display flex and flex direction to be column, right? That should do it. Also, what we're going to be needing is actually field error. So this field error is going to decide how we're going to render up the error. Just going to give it like a style and everything. So I'm going to have a color. I'm going to say red, but I'm going to choose a different color than complete red. Just a bit down here, I guess. Maybe you can change that later. For font size, we want something not really that big, so something small that should match. And also I want to give it a minimum height because we don't want to change the height of our form whenever this value comes back and forth. So that's the exact same thing we want to do there. So let's go ahead and wrap this one. So we've got field container, which I should do it. Okay, got this field container. Right, and got another field container, right? Got two more field containers. Let's copy paste them all. And there you go. So control save should make that look good. Anyway, so we got the field containers. Let's go ahead and add the errors. So we got field error. So just import that. And here we're going to check if Formik dot touched, and this object, the touch object, has everything or all the fields that are touched, which means all the fields that we have like put something into it, like we click the mouse and we type something into it. Otherwise, it's gonna be false. So this one is just like a boolean. If it's touched, if it's something like if we type something in that particular field, it's gonna be true. Otherwise, it's gonna be false. So touched dot full name. So if full name is touched, if you type something on it, and if Formik dot errors dot full name. So in that case, if they both like full name touched and errors, what we're gonna do Formik dot errors dot full name. Otherwise, just gonna render up nothing. Okay. So basically, this is gonna happen for all of those. Gonna just copy paste. This one gonna be email, email, email. And this is going to happen 2 more times for both the password and the confirm password. Alright, and this one should be confirm password. Alrighty, so that should do the job for us perfectly. And let me go ahead and check. So we already got some issues going on here and there. So we're gonna refresh everything, go to sign up. Let's see how it goes. Okay, the form is kind of going up and down already. So yeah, kind of like we got also an issue since we put the button inside of that. So let's go ahead and change that real quick for the form container. So I just need to remove the box shadow just to make it look better. And there you go. So if you click on that, nothing's going to happen because we typed nothing. If you type something, that's good. That's acceptable. If you remove something, yeah, that's not changing for the full name. Not sure email should do that or not. Okay, there's something wrong. So email, please enter valid email. So that should be something not making it work perfectly. That's the errors are not being showed up here for Formik. And yeah, so what we forgot about adding is actually the blur handler. So here also we have to do like on blur, make sure to delegate this to Formik and do blur handler or handler blur basically. Otherwise you won't be able to handle blur, which means it won't be able to validate on blur. Okay, so that should make sense. Here we have to edit all the fields that we need. Okay, so let's go here. Now whenever we type something, that's good. Remove it, we got immediately full name, you know, required and everything. So that's working pretty much fine in that case. So yeah, everything is working fine. We got the email and everything. The email should be working too. So if we remove something out of the email, it's going to tell us immediately please enter your email. Remove it completely, it's not going to work. So let's test this one. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It tells us please enter a strong password because that's literally not a strong password. If you enter up something that does not match, it's going to tell us also password does not match. If you enter up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's matching. The error goes away pretty well. So that's exactly working fine, and that's how we want it to work. So the sign up here with the validation and everything, it works absolutely fine, and it's kind of like looking absolutely amazing. So we can do the same thing for the sign in, and in a really quick way and an easy setup as well. So yeah, this is just going to be simply a copy pasting just to make that thing work. But what I want to do is just before jump into this, like the sign in or the login part, is actually combine or bind this registration with the API we got. So we're just going to make this one fully working. It's going to tell us the user that we registered, you've successfully registered and all that kind of stuff with the API that we've created using Node.js, Passport.js, and of course Express.js. So let's go ahead and jump right into this one. I'm going to jump into the other project, which is Express Login Register API. And this one has like the API, which is basically just /login, /register, and some dummy payment API that I just like for testing purposes. Okay, so that's basically what it got, and we're gonna need this register API a lot. And one thing just before jumping, if you already watched my video, or if you do watch my video, grab the full source code. You're not gonna be finding this status 409 and this status 500, and also for the login, some statuses. So why I added this, because this is better for handling errors on the UI. Just you know exactly which error message you got, which HTTP code you got back from the response of the server. So that is much more better to understand exactly what it does. So just add it in here. You can ignore that, but it's going to slightly change with Axios, but make sure to add this one. Or maybe I would just go ahead and update this. If you clone the new one, you're going to find the full changes working pretty much fine. So that's basically what it is. Now to start up this particular server, what we need is just go ahead and do yarn /dev, or just yarn dev directly. And this one is going to start up like a node mon kind of server for us on localhost 5000, and that should do the job perfectly. So let's go ahead and jump right into the code here. So pretty simple code. It should be working absolutely fine already. So now what we want is actually whenever we submit, which I think we did that submit, right? Okay. So let's go ahead and work onto the onSubmit. So for this one, we're gonna need to make sure that this one is asynchronous. So we can like use async away with this one. You can use then catch callback, promise callback, but I don't really fan of that. So just use this border frame. Syntax, much clearer, much more maintainable, much more understandable by everyone pretty much. So we're gonna need the response. And the values we're going to be sending is actually those are the values. So that's basically what we need. It actually has everything we need, like the full name, email, password. But likely, if we take a look on that, like attributes, what we need in here, we're going to also like only need password, email, full name. We're not going to need the confirmed password. So there's like no, no benefit just sending in any useful data. So just go ahead and make sure extract that exactly. So I'm going to have full name, or I'm just gonna how to extract. I'm gonna do confirm password, then I'm gonna do data. That's basically how, just using ES6 powers, and just make sure to destructure that from the values. Okay, now I'm gonna use Axios. It's gonna do an auto import for us. I'm gonna do a post request to http localhost 5000 /API /v1 /register. And remember, this is completely what I did on the other object, so it depends on the API you're like binding with. If you've got your own server running on the cloud, you're probably not going to have localhost, of course. You're going to have like a domain name, maybe an IP address, why not? And just like points into this, you give it the route where you want to register, where you want to point the register access or endpoint. And yeah, you got everything tied up into that basically. So, and lastly, we're going to have like data bound into this. Now we're going to have catch. So this one is going to be error. So if we got any kind of error, so if error and error dot response, so we're going to handle that. So we're just going to do like console log error, so we can handle that properly. Otherwise, if response is actually good, and I think I forget about await in here. So yeah, I forget. If response is good, like we got a valid response, we didn't get like an error on catch in here. So if an error happens on catch in here, like if catch is going to be called with an error callback, this variable is going to be undefined, which means using an if in here won't let it go anywhere further. So just make sure to always use like if with await and catch. Otherwise, you can use like the try catch blocks, which we can do in here, but I think that's a much easier way to follow up for now. And yeah, so there's like no sense just rewriting the whole thing from scratch right now. So that's basically what we got, the response and everything, and Axios request. Now on the response in here, if it gets a full valid response, so what we want, we want to show some message saying, oh, thank you for registering or whatever. So we're gonna have success, set success, which is just gonna be a message. Gonna use states in here, so it's gonna be first, it's gonna be null, obviously. It's gonna render up anything. Now I'm gonna go inside of this one, and I'm gonna create another element, which is gonna call form success, something like that. You know, I'm gonna use a span. So for the color, I'm gonna use green. I'm gonna change that slide a bit into maybe this color. I'm gonna have this font size of maybe 12 pixels, a bit bigger, and the minimum height is gonna be 20 pixels, I guess. That should do the job. Now let's go ahead and import, where is that? So it should go up above, I guess it should go here. So we should do form success. And whenever we get something out of this, just like anything at all, so what we can do, just do so if success, so we're gonna have it success text. Otherwise, I'm just gonna put an empty text there, empty quotes. Now here, if response is valid, which means we're gonna do like set success response.data.message, and make sure to check for response.data as well. Okay, that should make it work perfectly for that. So yeah, if we just get any response that is good and everything, we're gonna get like the good response in here, which is gonna render it out of the box right into there. So let's go ahead and test that thing. We got the onSubmit working, the data being sent, register API, everything we need. So let's go back right here. Let me just go and add like Alex, I don't know, something like that. Alex@me.com. Okay, enter some dummy text into there. Something that is actually a string. Okay, can't even type in. Alright, so now if we try sign up, there you go. We got thanks for registering, and in fact, this particular message is being sent back from the server. So if we take a look on server code, we got thanks for registering or response if the user is registered successfully, plus it is saved to the database and everything handled. So we get that back. And also if we take a look on the network tab, we already got like the register that is being sent. We get the preview, we got a message, thanks for registering, and it's being like rendered up really well on top of there. So we got everything into there working absolutely fine. So that, I absolutely love that. And just like one thing, I can just go and make this bit to the left because I don't like this text being centered. So I guess maybe yeah, maybe, is it this box container, form container? I'm not really sure what's making. Let me take a look. So let's call the box container. Yeah, maybe we should get rid of this align center kind of thingy, and that should make it better. And in fact, yes, it does. Thanks for registering. Maybe make it a bit bold. Wait. There you go. That's, I guess that's looking absolutely better. And yeah, so that's looking absolutely fine. And maybe we need to like clear out the form completely whenever we got a success that is, you know, success registering or an error, like whatever. So we want to clear out the form. So maybe in that case, so Formik, I guess, has reset form, which is a function that you do to reset form to its like original state, to its initial state. So I guess that should make it happen if you register. This pretty much has been like, you know, reset, but I also want to just like reset whenever we got success, but not an error, because if you get an error, we're gonna lose what we did. And I think we got an error already, so user with email already exists. And also we want to render out errors if any happens. So to do so, we're going to do the same thing as we did with success. So I'm going to do error set error. So I'm going to do use state, and it's going to be the same thing basically. You're going to have null here. If we got any errors, whatever right here. So I'm going to do error, so it's going to be error response message. So we're going to send up the error, and yeah, I guess we have to set the error for that one. So I'm just going to do copy this one, paste it, change from form success to form error, and copy whatever that code is just to make it matching, and that should make it work, right? So I guess we need to import that manually by ourselves. Where is that? So it's called form error, and what I want to check in here is actually if. So if not form error, and want to render out this, otherwise not form success. So we're on drop from error, if error, just gonna drop error, otherwise just an empty string most likely. So this is should be error, and this should be success, not from error success. And hallelujah. So yeah, that should be looking absolutely fine. And yeah, so we got the full name, email, password. So whenever we click on it, we got this like required field. And also I think I forgot about adding required field to yeah, I guess. So confirm password. Please confirm your password. That should make it better, obviously. So I click that, please confirm your password. If I click on it, nothing's gonna happen because this button is kind of disabled, so it's not gonna do anything for us whatsoever. We can even make that disabled to just like go ahead inside like the submit button. We add another CSS selector for disabled, and make sure to do like something like filter contrast 0.7 just to make it, you know, lower on contrast. So whenever you got like where is that button? So we got submit button. So whenever it is disabled, so we can do Formik dot disabled, or it's not really disabled. I guess it has errors or something, or is valid. So we got something is valid and we want it to be not valid, which means we want to disable that basically. So that's basically what it is. As clear as in here, it's being dimmed. The contrast is kind of lower and it looks like disabled. So now if you enter kind of anything, and if it like works, if the form is valid, accuracy becomes enabled, otherwise it's disabled, and yada. So yeah, absolutely fine. I love that, and it's working absolutely fine. If you get like an error, if you remember right, I think I put Alex Hendricks, I put me example. If we sign up, yeah, we get thanks for registering, because that's not what you put before. But I can go ahead and put that again, just in. So me add example again. So we can go ahead, sign up again, and that should be pumping out an error. User with email already exists, right? But yeah, we're saying not success here. Alright, so we're saying not error, so error response dot message. We're sending the error message and we're doing use state, right? So yeah, that should make it look good now, and that should make it look kind of working. So let's go ahead and do that again. Say that it's not being it's a conflict, and we still got the issue anyway. So let me just go ahead and do a console log on the error, see what's going on. So we got set error working, right? Really not sure exactly what is going on. And we got error to be undefined, right? And yeah, that's basically because I'm not accessing .data.message, because that's a mandatory thing to do. So if we click, we get an error. User with email already exists, so you need to change the email. So if you do like me too or something, you sign up, that's not working with our logic here. So the simplest part in that particular example, we have just to make sure that there's no success here, obviously. And whenever there is an error, we want to clear that success anyway, right? So we're going to do set success to be null. And here we want to clear, whenever we set the success, we want to clear the error to be null too. And that should make it work perfectly. Whenever there's an error or success, is going to be cleared out for us perfectly. So we got Alex Hendricks I don't know, me, an example, whatever. So we got the sign up. Here we got an error. And if we just like change the email to 3 or something, we click, we got thanks for registering, and the form changes back into the normal state. So that is exactly working absolutely fine with the finest way we want to do it. And it's going to be like absolutely amazing. So it's that working the awesome way that we want to do everything from scratch. So yeah, that's looking pretty great. So let's just want to jump right now and add this into the sign in form and make it look as good as the pretty much the registration form and bind it with the API and everything. So let's go and jump right into this. So we go login form, and we have got like to start from scratch. So I'm going to do this real quick because it's going to be pretty similar to what we did before with use Formik and add validation and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to just like walk through this one really simply, like using the same approach that I did with registration or the sign up form. Okay, so I'm going to first do Formik. I'm going to do use Formik, and make sure to like go ahead and do that. We got the initial values. So likely for these, we got only email and password. And mainly for that particular part, for the login, we're not going to have a lot of like validation because you don't want to tell whomever is actually logging in that you need, for example, a minimum 8 characters password. That's not really a security oriented kind of thing that you want to do in your login form. So you just like, maybe you want to provide some, like say, oh, email field is required or something like that. Because those are that simple, but nothing more than that, just for security, like cases pretty much. So that's what we're going to be needing for that particular case, like the email, and the password. Now, the next thing is actually validate on blur, which is true. And we're going to have on submit also. I'm going to do like on submit. It's going to have values again. So I'm going to have this one go in on submit, which is pretty great. Now we can go ahead and add basic validation. So I'm going to do validation schema, and this one is going to be import all async from objects, and we need email. So basically it's going to be up a string dot email dot required, and here please, or yeah, we're not going to check if an email, I'm just going to say it is required as said before. This just for security reasons. You can do that, but I don't advise you guys to do that anyway. And password, basically I'm going to do the same thing and require. So just super basic validation for that both of them. And so I'm going to do passing validation schema and just pass that one in. Okay, now we got Formik and everything we need. So as I said before, let's go ahead and put inside of it these ones, like the marginer and everything that we need. So for that one, we're going to need to put the name. So email value Formik values.email again, and on change we're going to do the handler again. So I'm going to Formik dot handle change, right? So I'm going to copy both of these, come down here, and this one should be password, and also for the name it should be password. Cool. Also make sure to put the button as a type of submit, just to make it work perfectly. And also we want to do disabled if it's not Formik.is valid. Okay, so in that case, if it's not valid, you're just gonna like disable the button just for better UI and user experience perspective. So that should look absolutely amazing. And what I want us to do, just go ahead and console log values, just in purposes to see if that is actually working fine for us. So let's go ahead and do here we got no error. So email, password, login, and I think we already like got some form being submitted for us which we don't want to happen any kind of submissions or anything like that. So we have to handle this using the onSubmit. We do Formik.handle submit, okay, just to get rid of that issue of like auto submission. So let me just gonna remove this error alarm and whatever here, they're logging in, and there you go, we got email and password, which is looking fine. If you remove, there's errors going on, but we're not rendering them, so let's go ahead and do that using field container. And make sure here to do field, I don't want to do this. So it's going to be field error, right? And so for that one, I'm going to use the Formik error. So I'm going to do the same thing, Formik.touch.email and errors.email. So if this one, I'm going to do Formik errors.email. Alright. So yeah, we got that working here. And just need to push that one here. I'm going to have the field container also going on there. So that is good. Got field container and everything. Just change this one to password. This one should be password as well, because that's a pretty basic thing. Make sure just copy paste, otherwise it will just blow up in your face. Okay, so that's good. We got the field container inputs and everything. So let's see how it goes. So if you interrupt nothing, like remove, we're not getting anything. So let me just console.log. Yeah, I guess I know the issue, which I always forgot to add, which is blur, the blur handler. So Formik.handle blur, okay. And yeah, this one's gonna handle up blur for us. So whenever we click outside the field, it's gonna just like trigger the blur effects on the Formik, which update the states for us. So if you enter something, remove it, and boom, we got an issue already. So cannot read properly email. Email often defined. All right, makes sense. So it shouldn't be errors, should be errors and errors. Okay, maybe that's what's causing the issue. Yeah, there you go. So we got email is required, which is good. If we put something, password is required, and we can't log in because the button is disabled anyway. So that's working fine, and that's working exactly the same way with the sign up and the sign in as well. Now let's go ahead and bind this into our real world API and make sure to log in the user. Just gonna do it pretty basically, just sending in the email and password and checking in and gets. Now obviously we're not gonna get to the message. Just do that to exactly guys know how you can just bind in the login as well. Because if you want to do a real world application, what you want to do is actually log in him in. If you do like authentication, which in our case we're doing using Passport.js and using JSON web tokens, so you get this GWT authentication token particularly for that particular user. You grab it in, you can place it on your local storage, on your cookies or something. Then authenticate the user, get him into the dashboard. Then whenever you want to access a particular restricted resource, particularly restricted to that particular user, well, you have got to just like send this GWT every single time and all that kind of stuff. Just check it in this video tutorial as I told you about authentication and login register system I talked about. So you're going to understand a lot, and you're going to understand exactly what I'm talking about and how authentication works. So make sure to do so real quick. So yeah, so let's go and jump again here, and yeah, there's basic stuff in here we're gonna do. So I'm gonna just convert this one to asynchronous, and I'm gonna get the data. So I'm gonna do response, awaits. I'm gonna use Axios post. So it's gonna be localhost 5000. So So API v1 login, just providing the values should do the job. So we get a catch. So if any kind of errors happens, and make sure to check if error and error.response. So I'm going to set an error. So let's go ahead and use an error variable in here as I did before. So it's going to start up null again. So it sets error. So error response.data message. That's how we access this one. And if response goes through, like if response is valid, it's not undefined or something. I don't know. We can do some I can do an alert. Welcome back in authenticating. So you can redirect him to the dashboard or whatever. Do this kind of scenario I talked about just a bit. So yeah, that's basically what we need to do for that. And for form container, what we need is actually to render up this error. So we wanna form error. So if error, we're gonna just like do error, otherwise nothing. That should make it pretty straightforward. And also I want to clear out the error. So whenever we send a new like login request, we're going to make sure that the error goes to null so we can send a proper request and we can clear out the error for better user experience, of course. So that should make it look better. Let's go ahead and do this one. I'm going to use a wrong email that doesn't exist. Okay, so I'm going to use this one, wrong password, whatever. Click login. We got email password does not match. If you take a look on the network tab, if you like, go ahead and inspect this one, and through you see we got message email password does not work, and we got 400 bad requests, which means the server is actually responding with this message, and we're just like displaying this one, so it's not allowing us to authenticate. Otherwise, let's go ahead and try this email with a valid password now. So we just do this one, click enter, and we got welcome back in authenticating, which is, right. We got a valid response. Take a look on the login. We got headers. We got 204, which means no contents, which means we basically got a valid response. In a real world scenario, in a real world service said before, this one should return something like a GWT token, particularly generated for that particular user using his like credentials, like email, password. Then he can use that token for a valid amount of time, like for a day, 2, a week, a month, whatever. Then he can access your restricted resource using that particular token. And that's how like microservices, like front end and back end applications basically make communication and just like authenticate between each others. So that's basically how it works. And I hope you guys actually enjoyed this one, because I really enjoyed like making this particular form, which a lot of you guys in that case love this design. And a lot of you guys asked me to do this validation kind of tutorial. So hopefully this is a full course validation from scratch with a binding validation, just doing it everything. So this course should take you from like a 0 with like a UI form and make it a real active, alive form that is bound with a login register API that can do validation using the app, that is having like state managers using Formik and all that kind of stuff. That is looking absolutely elegant. So without further ado, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this one, and yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe, like, and push the like button, share with your friends, why not, and catch you all hopefully in the next ones.